So yeah, I think we're going to segue that kind of into a little broader of a discussion about the SEC and kind of the outlook right now. Because we were talking over text last night about scenarios and outcomes, and there's one that I have that I'm very interested to get y'all's thoughts on. This is part of the if you've been around for a little bit, we do what if segments. So this one would be what if there are four 11-1 SEC teams at the end of the season, and we're going to take you through how that's possible, and kind of what that would look like. But after the Alabama Georgia game, and with Texas playing how they're playing and Tennessee playing how they're playing, we have four major contenders in the SEC, four teams that still all control their destiny, in my opinion. Yep. You win, you're in, right? So,
is Ole Miss included in this? Like, if Ole Miss wins out, they would still be 11-1.
I did not include them. Yes, they would still be 11-1.
But that would
you
kind
could
of eliminate Georgia as one of the teams.
Yeah. So it's got to be. It's got to be. It doesn't have to be one of them, but like, yeah.
I aired on the more likely scenario in my head. I don't know if that's biased or not. But statistically,
I mean, one
statistically
of us beat Kentucky,
speaking, I don't.
One of us lost to Kentucky, so it's kind of
The transitive property. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take you through this scenario here, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit. So starting off with Georgia, obviously what happened this past Saturday happened. They played their tails off in the second half and looked like a completely different team. So in this scenario, let's just say they figure it out. The Dogs, they take what they had in the second half and they parlay that into the rest of the season, and they just continue to look like their old selves. They have a tough schedule. They go into Austin in a few weeks from now to play Red Hot Texas. And then they pull the Tennessee Volunteers at home, and then they have to go to Oxford, Mississippi, which is looking a little less daunting after Kentucky this past Saturday, but nonetheless, it is a road game in the SEC. But let's just say they win that out. They look like their old selves. They do that.
Yep.
Alabama. This is the big kink in the plan, but it's possible because there's a lot of people who are very, very high on Tennessee, and it's easy to see why. They have looked dominant all season offensively. They looked pretty impressive in the Oklahoma game. Toward the end, they kind of let them creep back a little bit, but it's still a road win in the SEC, so I'm not going to discount that, even if it's Oklahoma.
Too.
Yeah, they played solid defense and did what they needed to do to win the game, so I'm not going to discount them for that. Their schedule is not the hardest, but they have two of the best teams in the country on their schedule. In Georgia and Alabama, they go into Athens, and then they play Alabama in Knoxville. So in this scenario, I'm going to say that they beat Alabama in their backyard once again, maybe tear down the field goal post, throw them in the river again, because I know they would storm the field again, because Alabama's number one again, and they do not like each other. So they get that one. That's their Super Bowl of the season, and it should be. And then they go into Athens, and they slip up. So they're 11-1 at the end of the season with a tiebreaker head-to-head with Alabama.
So you have a little three-way.
You have a triangular head-to-head tiebreaker, because then you look at the Alabama side, and for this to be a scenario, Alabama would have to lose to Tennessee in Knoxville and win out.
Yep.
And then the other card that comes into play here is Texas. And they're kind of interesting. So in this scenario, they would, and I don't know, guys, if you've seen their schedule, go take a look at it. The Georgia game is really the hardest game they have left. Yep. Outside of that, they go to College Station to play Texas A&M. I know that's a kind of, obviously it's a rivalry.
You want me to run it down real quick?
Yeah, let's hear their schedule outside of Georgia at home.
All right, so they have a bye this week, and then they've got Red River next week, and then obviously Georgia. And then they head to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. They host Florida. They head to Arkansas. They host Kentucky, and then they head to College Station, like you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So outside of the Georgia game, realistically, there's only two games I could possibly see them losing. I could see them slipping up in Red River. They did last year. It's a rivalry. It's heated. You never know any given Saturday. And then A&M. Those are really the two most realistic spots. But with how Oklahoma has looked on offense, pretty inept. And with how Texas has looked, obviously, a little slow start against Mississippi State, but, SEC team, whatever.
And backup quarterback.
Yes. Backup quarterback Arch Manning, the phenom. But with Quinn Ewers, they're undoubtedly a better team.
Yeah.
So those are the only two other games I could see them slipping up at. But in this scenario, let's just say Georgia recovers, beats them, and then now you have an 11-1 Georgia, an 11-1 Alabama, an 11-1 Tennessee, and then 11-1 Texas, with Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee all having tiebreakers head to head against each other.
I think.
I mean, the thing is, when I first thought about this, I thought this is pretty out there. But the more I've thought about it a little more, I mean,
don't need much.
No,
if I'm Tennessee, I am circling Alabama on my calendar. They know if they beat them, if they can at least split Georgia and Alabama, they're a lock. Yeah. And this is the best season they've had in years. So if I'm Josh Heupel, I've got my A game.
Really, all you need for this to kind of play out, Georgia to run the table, Tennessee to pull it off at home against Bama, and then everyone else to win out.
Yep. The crazy thing is, I think in this scenario, I think Texas might be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what your tiebreaker is at this point because, they don't have... What is their...
I got it.
He's got
it. I'd love to hear it because I'm actually genuinely interested because, I mean, if you have this, have all beaten each other triangle, and then Texas is kind of far removed because who's their big SEC win? You lose to Georgia. You beat Michigan. You beat Oklahoma. So there's another big conference win. A&M,
Just to clarify for everybody watching out there, this is not for the college football playoff. This is for the SEC title game.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I'm just making it 100% clear. The last time we talked about this, because we did mention this was possible because Texas and Alabama do not play each other. And as preseason, they were, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss were the 4 favorites. Whatever. I don't have to explain this to you. I'm just explaining to the crowd. So, the last time we talked about this, the SEC, which was the last week of August, the SEC had not released their tiebreakers. They now have. Mm. In the event of a tie between teams competing for place in the conference championship game, the following procedures will be used in descending order until the tie is broken. Head-to-head. And then record versus all common conference opponents among the tied teams.
That's a W. I like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Record against highest, and then in parentheses, best, placed common conference opponent in the conference standings and proceeding through the conference standings amongst the tied teams. Not really sure what the difference is between B and C.
Pretty similar.
Yeah. We can go back for reading comprehension and break that down. But let's move on to D. Cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among the tied teams. If they're all 11-1, wouldn't the winning percentage be the same?
That sounds like the winning percentage of the people that you beat.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Brandon.
So we're really grasping at straws.
We're getting down there. Yeah. And then E, capped relative total scoring margin versus all conference opponents amongst the tied teams. I don't really know what capped means. I hope they go into more detail there.
I think they're just making things up at that point. It's like they figure there is no way that something makes it down to this level.
And then, point F is random.
Random? You just put numbers in a hat?
Maybe they show up to Birmingham and flip a coin.
That'd be better than random, whatever random.
We've seen that before, right?
And
not in the SEC. I feel like it's happened in college football.
I'm sure it has. Before they came up with points C through E, I'm sure that back in the day they just jumped straight to F. I know that was a plot point in the Friday Night Lights movie. But anyway, okay. Yeah. Okay, so A and B, W's, easy to understand, not a problem at all. C, record against highest placed conference opponent in the conference standings. Highest placed common conference opponent. So let's just say hypothetically, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama all play Kentucky. and they all beat Kentucky, and that's their only common opponent, which I don't really, that wouldn't make any sense, but let's just, hypothetical, guys. They all played Kentucky, and they all beat Kentucky. Then it would,
Move on to the next point, right?
yeah, which, well, I'm saying, like, point B would be they all beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
And then they move on to the record against the highest, best placed common conference opponent. Which I don't know. I just see a really.
Okay, so here it would be like record against all all common opponents.
Mhm.
They would take it,
And then you move
and
on
then
to
you
the
go on to the best one. Like if, for example, actually, wait, yeah.
yeah. So if one of them had their loss, so this is the way I'm thinking about it. In the tier before,
Oh,
so say they have one loss in that tier, but that loss was to a higher ranked team.
So,
yeah. So if
so
we
they're
So
not
we're moving on to
opponents
a quality of loss.
Oh.
if we-
Okay.
quality of loss. Yeah, that's it. 'Cause
That's
if we
what
go
that
3-1
level
in
is.
Conference, so does Texas.
But
our
your
loss
loss
is to like Vanderbilt, and their losses to Alabama, just
Yeah.
for
So
shits. They
okay.
would go over us.
Yeah.
So in this triangle, if we all have the common opponents, Florida and Kentucky, and let's just assume Kentucky ends up higher in the rankings at the end of the year than Florida does. If Tennessee beat Kentucky but lost to Florida, then they would get more weight for beating Kentucky, or vice versa.
The first one sounds right.
Okay.
I don't know. We're not going to need to use the third.
Let's
or
just
fourth.
hope. Let's just hope we never get to the third option.
Yeah. Then shit really hits the fan, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. So
so
who do
in
we have that
our-
are common opponents?
So I genuinely, I mean, we don't have to hash it all out, but like, I want to know what this scenario would play out as in this, because my gut tells me that, Georgia has wins against Texas and Tennessee.
And,
So they,
yeah.
I think, and Ole Miss
Yep.
should be a lock.
Yeah.
But then you get to the point where it's like, okay, so then Alabama has the head-to-head
Ooh,
over
head-to-head.
Georgia, so they deserve to play them in the SEC championship,
wait.
right? But then
Yeah.
Tennessee has the head-to-head over Alabama, so
There you
they
go.
deserve to be there, right? So it's like we're like, do you see what I'm saying?
4-team playoff.
So like, I think it gets
How would
down
we
at
ban
that
Tennessee?
point.
Ooh.
You're
You
just
got
gonna
me
keep
doing
What
that?
talking in circles.
Would it?
I'm
Would
just
it?
what
Like, I
Tennessee,
genuinely, like,
Georgia,
I was
Tennessee.
driving back home last night. I was thinking about this, and I was starting to hurt my head because I
Yeah.
kept going around because everybody has a claim.
Yeah. Like,
Each three of those teams has the head-to-head with each other.
and
So
is
I
Texas
should be there because
screwed?
I beat you.
Yeah.
I don't know, because Chris was texting. He's like, low-key maybe Texas, because they don't have head-to-head with Tennessee or Alabama.
Alabama.
They have head-to-head with Georgia, but then what then?
Well, they would have a
Decision is
head-to-head.
green. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, see, this was never a problem with divisions.
That is the
Um,
one thing with the divisions, with all the gripes against it. You had a clear cut. You win your side, you were going to be there, and I think that's, I mean, kind of what the divisions prevented was a scenario. However, this is not. It is something that can happen, but
Yeah.
college football is so unpredictable. You hardly ever see 3 11-1 teams out of
Yeah.
a conference. But it's fun to talk about,
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I mean, yeah, the odds of this happening are extremely low. Extremely low. But, I mean, looking at it, we do, like, I say we, the 5 teams, well, the 4.5 teams, the 5 teams that we have mentioned all do have a lot of common opponents, which is good. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kentucky is on everybody's schedule, except for Alabama. So that's good.
Mhm.
And then Florida is all over the place on here too, which is good. So like, if we do have to get to point B, there should be some parity here, or point
Mhm.
C. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yes, this would send ESPN into a frenzy.
I mean, this is the complete chaos scenario.
Yeah, I mean,
The
the
because
only way. Yeah.
somebody's going to be pissed.
The easy
Somebody
way
is
out-
going to be left out,
Yeah, the easy way out is for Alabama to not lose to Tennessee.
which I don't think they will. To go
I
on
don't-
record and say, I think that is the most unlikely part of this scenario.
Yeah.
I think the
Um,
rest of it's pretty feasible with Texas and Georgia and Alabama. However, Tennessee would have to bring their A game. I do think there is a chance that this is their Super Bowl and they at least give them a scare. So
Yeah. But if Tennessee does beat Alabama, then they're probably going to lose to like South Carolina or somebody.
they always do something like that. Yeah, inevitably. The moment's a little too big, but
Sorry, it would be Mississippi State this year. My apologies.
yeah. Well, I mean, Tennessee beats Alabama. They're undefeated. They're number 1 again for the first time since 2022.
And then they lose to Kentucky a week later. Or 2 weeks later. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. But I'm trying to be silly. But yeah, it's.
I don't know. We can't sit here and say what would happen because I honestly do think this scenario would have to come down to common opponents. I don't think there's anything around that because the more I think about it, any angle that you take it, if you pick one of those 3 teams to say, okay, they're in, the other 2 have just as much of a claim because they either have a head-to-head with the other team that's left out or the head-to-head with the team that is already there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how common opponents would sort things out because if we're assuming they're all 11-1, then they all have the same record against their common opponents.
I guess it just comes down to who has the worst loss. So in this scenario, Georgia lost to Alabama.
By
And
7.
by 7. Tennessee will have lost to Georgia by, and I guess maybe we get in the point differential in the game's margin of victory, maybe. And then Texas lost to Georgia. So these are all very high level losses. So I guess it depends on who has the best loss at that point.
It would.
And
I mean, that's pretty much what Point E says. It's capped relative total scoring margin.
Because in that scenario, sorry, I'm just trying to think this out more. It's kind of
No.
crazy.
Please.
I'm trying to think of how the rankings would be at the end of the season if this scenario played out. So who has the last victory? I think because I think Georgia ends up at number
These are the
1
these are the CFP rankings.
or like higher ranked because if you think about it, so Georgia's got their loss out of the way and then they went out and they beat Oklahoma. They beat not Oklahoma. They beat
Texas
Texas on the road and Ole Miss and Tennessee. So you haven't lost their number 1 at that point, or maybe not number 1 in the country, depending, but number 1, the highest,
probably the highest ranked SEC
ranked in
team.
this. Yes,
Yeah.
and then so at that point, Alabama will have. I low-key think it might be Tennessee
That's what I'm thinking too.
because Alabama will have just lost to Tennessee, but then Texas loses to Georgia. No, Tennessee loses to Georgia after
There
they
you
beat
go.
Alabama.
Yep.
So then Alabama jumps them again.
Yep. And the only games for Tennessee to like make up the Georgia loss are UTEP and Vanderbilt. So
I think at that point, Tennessee will have had the latest loss, and they would be ranked behind all of the Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. So I think
good.
I think in this scenario, it boils down to probably what I could have told you at the beginning, that it would probably be Georgia and Alabama. If they could find a way to do it, they would. But I do think that there are intricacies beyond just where they end up at the end of the season.
I think we may have. Oh, never mind.
I was gonna say, are we just dumb? Are we been
No.
arguing about something invalid this whole time?
No. It's valid. It's valid. I just think we're also forgetting the fact that Missouri is also at play here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They play Bama. They play Texas.
They do play Bama. Mm-hmm.
Don't
No,
forget
Missouri's a
Georgia.
good football team.
Missouri does not play Texas.
Oh, I thought they did. My bad.
No. Okay. No, if Missouri beats Alabama and Alabama wins out,
Ooh.
Alabama's
Alabama
still
will go because they have the tiebreaker against Georgia.
in. Yeah.
But this is assuming we flip the
This
Tennessee
is-
loss. So their only loss in this scenario would be Mizzou.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it simple. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, there's so many good teams in the SEC.
There
There
is.
could be like the
Well,
any combination of these things. I mean, hell, Ole Miss could win out. Improbable, they could win out. Missouri could have one loss.
Well,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, if Missouri does win out, they're in.
oh, they're undefeated, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What does their schedule look like?
Jesus fuck. Texas A&M, UMass, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas.
Okay, so I mean, if they beat Alabama, they deserve it. To be
Yeah.
quite honest, but
Oh,
I mean, yeah,
Jesus.
that's a real possibility.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy. But okay.
Yeah,
you
there's
keep
so many
going.
ways you could split this. We're gonna talk ourselves into oblivion
Yeah,
if we
but-
keep doing this. But
You
I-
can't
I-
have this conversation in September. You've got to wait until at least early November to have this conversation.
exactly, and then
Okay,
obviously the picture becomes a lot more clear 9 times out of 10. But it's fun to discuss hypotheticals because I don't know, we just love talking college football. So
Yes, sir.
let us know what y'all think about this scenario, how it would shake out. If we have some rules experts, somebody who can maybe crunch the numbers if you really want to. Genuinely curious about that, but it probably would come down. You probably wouldn't have the data that you needed. You would need to see the common opponents of anything. But all that to say, a very, very interesting year shaping up for the SEC and college football as a whole, and the first year of the 12-team playoff. So we're super, super excited to see how it plays out the rest of the way.